Doctors of Reddit, what's your best they came in for a small checkup and ended up needing surgery story? I went to my doctor thinking I had a bladder infection. I felt like I had to pee every 5 minutes. Doctor found nothing but sent me for an ultrasound. Turns out I had a cyst the size of a grapefruit on one of my ovaries that was resting on my bladder. 5 days later I was in the hospital having my ovary removed. Not a doctor, but I worked in an emergency room in nursing school. I was sitting out in Tridge late one night. My nurse had ran to the back for a minute and a guy comes in. Only complained was a sore throat. Nothing else at all. Just a sore throat. But something was off. He had a slight greyish tone. As a tech, I figured why the hell not. Told him to follow me and took him to our EKG area. Few minutes later, my nurse comes back and is looking at me like I'm nuts because I'm doing an EKG on a sore throat. I handed her the printout and she had a no-sheet look. He was having a steamy, massive heart attack. My charge nurse came out later after the dust had settled and asked me what made me check him. I told her I didn't know, he just didn't look right. Intuition can be a funny thing. Poor guy. He was slightly confused about the whole thing. He just wanted something to fix his throat irritation. I'm not a doctor but I still have a story. My dad had a bad stomachache. Didn't know the cause. It was bad. But we thought it was just a bad case of food poisoning. He was in emergency and the doctor saw a burst appendix. So they took him in for surgery. Opened him up and it was stage 4 cancer. He had several tumors removed and had to go to chemo. On chemo. Got better. Then got worse. Another surgery. Deteriorating health. Just pure chaos. This was 4 years ago. He died just last year. Actually a doctor pediatrician, so many stories. Teenager comes in for ear pain and turns out there is a hornet stuck in the ear biting the crap out of his canal and eardrum, had to have it surgically repaired. Kid comes into ER for cough for a couple weeks. Parents are very worried and the kid lucks off. So I order a chest x-ray. His mediastinum, the white part between the lungs, takes up almost the entirety of his chest. Massive tumor. Kid with belly pain and vomiting for 12 hours. Belly exam is hard, not like she is flexing but like rigid as a board. Ultrasound for appendicitis shows a massive kidney tumor that went from right lung to bottom of the right pelvis. Wilms tumors are crazy. Most recently had a little one in for a regular checkup that parents had kept postponing. Kid can't sit up alone and parents still have to feed, not normal for a 9-month. Ultrasound of the head shows too much water in the brain and the kid gets surgery within 24 hours. Doctor here. I had one a few months ago sent into the hospital by his primary care doctor with shoulder pain. He said he felt absolutely fine. Just a really uncomfortable right shoulder pain that hadn't gone away for a couple of weeks. He maybe felt a bit more tired than usual and come to think of it, had lost quite a bit of weight recently and none of his clothes fit him anymore. I went to examine him and had what we describe in the profession as a heart sink moment. He was jaundiced, and his abdomen was absolutely solid in the right upper zone from a huge, craggy liver. Get him in the CT scanner and he is just full of cancer. Everywhere. Couldn't even work out which was the primary. The shoulder pain is what we call referred pain and is commonly caused by diaphragmatic irritation. In this case from all the liver masses pushing against it. Bless him. I think about him a lot. Not a doctor. Daughter of a patient. 4 years my dad complained of gut pain. He went from doctor to doctor and they all said, oh, it's just a stomachache or even it's all in your head. Dad went to one doctor that took him seriously and did a scan. Turns out his gallbladder had died. Not a doctor, but the patient. Went in to get my shoulder looked at because my rotator cuff was being a bit of a big dick. No one had looked at me shirtless in at least a few years beforehand. So imagine the collective surprise when we discovered my mild scoliosis had progressed to a visible deformation. I just got extra unlucky in that I developed an 84-degree curve one way. and an 85-degree curve the other way. So I never developed the telltale scoliosis lean. Ended up having spinal fusion done within 5 months. Because it would have been dangerous to do it any later. A couple years ago, my mom was experiencing crazy back pains. She went to this one doctor every so often to get some pain medication, and that doctor, for the life of him, couldn't find anything wrong with her, but could tell she was experiencing major pain. So gave it to her. One day, she's going in again and her doctor is out, so she has a different one. While being checked up, the doctor says, "So you're here for the broken back, then?" And my mom was really confused. Apparently, in 1999, she had been in a car accident where a tanker truck carrying gas rolled over her car and crushed her inside, but nobody had apparently noticed that her back was broken for almost 16 years. She had surgery on the day of my birthday and she's been a happier and more easygoing person since. Not a doctor. Mom was the patient. She went in to get a regular checkup, renew her prescriptions, etc. Mentioned that she had been having pain in one of her fingers. She had put off getting it checked cause she was thinking it was just arthritis. Doctor refers her to a hand doctor. Turns out it's a tumor that's wrapped around her bone and tendon. She gets surgery to remove it tomorrow. I am the patient. I work construction for a living and was working a job removing some very heavy laminated glass. Strenuous lifting all day long. During the course of the gig, my left testicle began to swell and hurt, and wasn't getting any better. I told my supervisor I suspected I had given myself a hernia. Not unheard of in my field. And went to the occupational healthcare clinic in town. The sweetest grandmotherly physician did the whole turn your head and cough deal. Awkward. Necessary. But yielded nothing. She recommends I check myself into the emergency room and get an ultrasound. Well, when the ultrasound tech finished the session by saying "Good luck to you, buddy," I suspected something amiss. Well, one removed testicle, a round of chemotherapy, and an abdominal lymph node removal later. Testicular cancer hasn't beaten me down. I'm awaiting my 4-month post-surgery CAT scan now. Fellas, check ya nuts. Not a doctor, but my dad has a pain in his back for a week or two. So he went to the doctors to make sure it wasn't more than a pulled muscle from catching for me when I practiced pitching in middle school. They did some scans, and he ended up being diagnosed with lymphoma. I like to say my wild pitching saved his life. He's been in remission for a few years. Never figured out what the back pain was. Not me. Not a doctor. A friend who is the definition of anti-establishment, anti-vax, anti-anything science-backed, always had a little bump on her nose. She put her oils on it, smooched with sage to remove the toxins, and regarded it as her beautiful bump. The bump gets bigger, darker. Her grandmother supposedly tricks her into going to the doc about it. I think she was supposed to be helping grandma to her own appointment, but sneaky grandma had other plans. Anyway, Miss Oliscure everything is currently in hospital having the entire left side of her nostril and part of her cheek removed due to skin cancer. Obligatory. Not a doctor. This happened to an old co-worker of mine. I was a supervisor at a truck terminal. One of our delivery drivers was moving a pallet in his truck when the wheel of the jack caught some debris on the floor of the trailer, and he pulled something in his abdomen. He went to the doctor either that evening or the next day, and in the middle of the exam, the doctor basically just stopped and told him to go to the hospital like right away. It turned out he had a baseball-sized tumor in his abdomen, and it wound up being malignant. He died like half a year late. R.I.P. Jimmy. I went to the doctor trying to get a sick note so I could call out of work because my stomach hurt and I threw up a few times. I ended up in the hospital for 24 hours needing emergency surgery. I was pissed off. All I wanted to do was go home and play video games, but I was stuck watching hospital TV. 14-year-old cancer survivor comes in for his routine post-chemo screening echocardiogram. His heart was barely moving. I don't remember the EF. Probably in the low teens. We sat him and mom told for some bad news. Put Himmler on his arm for a PICC and walked him to the cardiac ICU. A few months later he has a heart transplant. Kids. Man. They can look great on the outside when compensated. Then you look at the images and just get nauseous for them. Scariest thing about pediatrics and number one reason why kids need kid doctors. Not a doctor, but my dad's skin was itching a lot and creams or allergy meds weren't giving relief. Went to the doctor and found out it was stage 4 liver cancer. He died 2 weeks later. We were all nuts for a while after that one. I am so sorry for your loss. I'm not surprised you were all nuts after that kind of shock. Itchiness seems to be a symptom of several very serious endocrine things. To the point where I think it should be better known as a danger sign.